When I was a kid, I imagined that in the future we'd all be wandering around Gielinor in a first-person perspective with full keyboard controls and swinging swords around in real time. You know, in that way we were as kids, where every new leap in games technology was cool and awesome, and everything that came before it was lame and cringe. I thought the only reason Jagex hadn't made the upgrade yet was because they hadn't thought of it yet. I was a dumb kid. Well, recently I've been watching a lot of people building Lego cities, which conveniently was also a dream of mine as a kid, as it probably was to any other kid who played with Lego back in the day. I was inspired to start a real big building project of my own, but I don't have the space or the thousands of pounds required for real building bricks, so we took it virtual, which also gives us the convenient opportunity to make that 3D first-person explorable Gielinor a reality. So let me introduce you to Vintage Story. It's a voxel-based open-world survival sandbox game that's... yes, it's like Minecraft, but it's a lot more than that. I won't get into all of its differences just now, but if I was going to give you the quick pitch, it's like a Minecraft with way deeper progression and much more reason to actually build stuff. I'll put a video up in the corner to give you more to look at if that sounds like your thing, but I would highly recommend it if you are one of those people who's looking for a Minecraft type game but found the original to be a bit too lacking to hold you for longer than that 2-week phase. So, for its more advanced building options and in my personal opinion nicer textures, Vintage Story became my medium of choice. Started up a creative superflat world and got to work. My goal? To recreate Gielinor in all of its glory. After a few hours, the first building started to take shape, and after that, well, why don't I give you the tour? And here we are. Welcome to Lumbridge, as you've never seen it before. I thought I'd do a bit of a live tour, take you through everything I've made, and then also discuss sort of how it's built and the design decisions and some of the problems we've faced and, you know, how we try to overcome them. So let's turn on the HUD so we can see what we're doing, and let's begin. Of course, we start in the place you hope to never come back to after dying somewhere, the Lumbridge Castle courtyard. Let's start by going inside, into everyone's favourite castle, and maybe we'll go right to the dining room. Home of course, one of the best quests ever, Recipe for Disaster. The council's not in at the minute, and this is the small version of the room, not the extra large version that wouldn't fit. And I'm quite proud with how this one came out. I think everything looks quite nice. You can take a seat at the table. Seat next to Evil Dave. Have a great time. The fireplace, I've built the fire myself out of blocks. I think this is probably as good a time as any to talk about how building in VintageScape actually works, at least. So, you're probably all familiar with standard blocks. You know, you can place your blocks down just like in any Minecraft type game and take them back again. But in VintageScape, you also have another option. You can do a little bit more. Using the chisel, which I have here, you can actually knock pieces of the block away and make them into almost any shape you want. There is still a grid, and it goes down to it's about a 16 by 16 by 16 grid that you have access to, and you can even add additional blocks to it to make it out of multiple things, which is how I've achieved things like this chair. So if I take this chair and I take the two parts using the middle mouse button, I can clone pieces. You can actually see that it's made of two separate pieces. So this is one block, and on top is another. So what I've had to do is chisel out every single individual block to make a shape like this. So it's made of, I believe, 3 different materials: this wood, this red stuff, and some gold for the top. So that gives you an idea of sort of how these items are built. So yes, that's why it took such a long time. These candles, each of them, you know, each of these is one little pixel, so it's a lot of very small, fine detail work. So all of that adds up to end up at a point where building a room like this can take as long as building the entirety of an outside building. Other items, though, aren't actually built this way. There are some pre-made items. For example, this banner on the wall here is actually just a pre-made decorative item. I've used a mix of both, depending on, you know, what I feel is closer to the original, or generally just what looks better. These suits of armor, for example, it's an armor stand with some iron armor on it. Trying to pixel craft, you know, 1 pixel at a time at something that looks like an armor set would be way too difficult for my skill level, so I've used pre-made items where it makes sense to do so. Which is how we get to this fire. Obviously, there's no good way to put a fire inside of a block, so I've tried to make my own using pixels. Hopefully it gives the right impression. And it looks quite nice at night. Yes, so this is the first room. We've got all the nice furnishings of the dining room. Let's head into the kitchen. The cook's not here at the minute, so no cook system right now. I'm quite proud of how this oven came out. I quite like how that looks. It very much reminds me of the. Let's just put this box away. Very much reminds me of the the classic RuneScape range. Seems just ready to cook some shrimp on. And of course, if we head round upstairs to the hole on the side, we can now head upstairs. Make sure to grab the mind rune on your way up. These stairs are actually quite difficult to build because there's not very much room in here. And in the real game, the stairs that they use are really small, and I think you'd have a real hard time climbing them in reality. But let's make it to the second floor, and you can look out across the world. Obviously, everything's very bare right now, but one day you'll be able to look out there and see the swamp of Lumbridge, and it'll look pretty cool, I hope. Anyway, here we have the cannons and the flags from the front. You can see the gatehouse down there. You'll notice that these are sort of, I think that in the real game they're meant to be like arrow slits, like to shoot like an arrow through, but in the real game obviously they're just attached to the wall and they're just black inside. Whereas in reality they'd probably be a hole. I tried it with a hole. I didn't like how it looked, so that's why they're black like that. My philosophy for building this, I've tried to make it as close to the real game as possible, but I have also made some concessions to what looks reasonable. Some things in the game don't translate perfectly to this building medium, so I've had to make some changes where appropriate. But if we go inside again, we can see this is the Duke of Lumbridge's bedroom with his big ass bed. And next door, we'll of course see the room with the spinning wheel, which I haven't built. I can't believe I forgot to put that in. Yeah, I think I messed around with it for a while, but I wasn't quite able to make something I was happy with. Something about a project like this is that it's never truly finished. You always can come back and add more. This is as much as I got. I got to a stage where I wanted to have it done, where I felt happy to post the first video, and I'm hoping that if there's some interest in it, I'll make a lot more. There's the bronze dagger on the drawers as well here. If we continue on upstairs though, we can go to the top. Let's head to the bank. Through here, and of course you can get access to your things in here with the bank, and of course deposit box and the poll booth if you need to vote on something, vote no to a bunch of things. It's all here. And if we head around to the front, burn these logs for your beginning fire making training, and you can get a good view of the whole of Lumbridge from up here. So if we head back down, I'm just going to jump over because it's quicker. So now we're back in the courtyard, and you can see the famous fountains which I built. The water inside of them is actually made of ice, because you can't have little blocks of water there so easily. But if we head out, let's head into one of the gatehouses here. There's the little chairs on the side. You can head on the ladder. How many times have you ever been in here in the real game? There's just no reason to ever come in here. I think Purdue's in here, but that's about it. There's bronze pickaxes up here if you need one, and there's winches that you can activate but never use that exist in a handful of places in the game. You can, they have an operate action, but it never works. It never does anything. I wonder if it ever did. I don't know. What's one for the RuneScape historians to tell you about. But then you can go back down the other side, of course. Really happy with how these little barrels and things came out. Really gives the world a lot of life. Just to have little things like that dotted around. You really do gain an appreciation for how much little detail there is in the RuneScape world when you really focus in to build something like this. Like, how many times have you ran past all this stuff and never even noticed what's there? And of course, there's the whole castle in all its glory. One thing, which I guess I'll bring up now, you'll notice that buildings in my version look quite a lot taller than they do in RuneScape for real. And that's a quirk of how the grid system works. Let's talk about that now. So if we, for example, if we take one of the walls from the castle, and I take a whole block so you can see what it looks like without that. So what I've in RuneScape, obviously it's a grid-based system, just as it is in Vintage Story. So I've tried. So in theory, you can match up the grid of RuneScape to the grid of Vintage Story, but you can end up with a little bit of trouble when you want to build upwards. The horizontal grid makes perfect sense, but vertically it's not quite the same. So what happens is you want to build, for example, a room. Your character's about 2 blocks tall, so you want the room to be about 3 blocks because 2 blocks is, that's way too small. So you build it up to about here. But you end up needing an extra block just to have the floor separation between the ground floor and the first floor. You could try and knock off the bottom and make it taller that way, but then you end up with issues where if you want to actually place something underneath, you've got this gap. You can't place anything on here because you've got to fit the grid of the game. If you want to do something like hang a chandelier from here, you can't because it's halfway up a block. It needs to hang from the bottom of a block, like here. So I did a lot of testing with it, and I found that the best way to do it was just to make buildings slightly taller than they should be. Hopefully I've explained that in a way that makes sense. If you have questions about anything, of course, put them in the comments and I'll try my best to explain. But hopefully as we go around as well, you understand a bit more. So yeah, one thing you'll notice about the scale is that buildings tend to be a bit taller than they should be, which makes them look also too narrow because they're not as wide, because they're taller than they are wide, they end up looking kind of narrow and tall. As for walls, as I've shown, I've made them about 4 voxels wide, so there's 16 by 16 in each cube, and I've made them 4 wide. Again, I could have made them a full block wide, but in RuneScape, that's not how buildings are laid out. If you actually look at a building in RuneScape, the walls each exist on one side of the grid, and they can be on the outside or inside, depending on how you look at it, of any grid square. So they could, if you were going to build a corner, use the rotate, so this grid square has actually been partially filled in because of the walls that exist on it. So that's what I've done in Vintage Story. Again, tried my best to keep it the same. There are a few places where my walls might be a grid square, like they're on the inside of a grid square when they should be on the outside, but again, that's just a quirk of the building. And hopefully not too noticeable. But anyway, with those caveats out of the way, let's do some more exploring. So this is the entrance gate. Of course, there should be some statues here. I mean, one of them is stolen during Guard of Tranquility, but I guess they took the other one too. The real answer is that I couldn't figure out a good way to carve the statue to make it look good. I might come back to that one. But if we let's head over this way first. This is obviously the sign that tells you that Al-Kharid is over that way. It will be in the future. Let's head into the Sheared Ram. If you look on the front, you can actually see I've made the sign as well, the Sheared Ram Pub, and you can get yourself a beer, or these nice little tables and chairs. And for some reason, there's a cash register. This is there in the real game. One of those weird quirks of trying to figure out what time period RuneScape is supposed to be in. Like a cash register, I feel like these things would have been invented a lot later than the sort of pseudo-medieval period we have for RuneScape, but I digress. Of course, you can pour yourself a beer. There's some glasses hung up and many bottles to choose from. Quite happy with how these turned out. They're quite cute looking. This is why one of the reasons I chose to do Vintage Story as opposed to the classic Minecraft, to be able to carve these tiny little details. I'm sure there's mods in Minecraft that let you do it, but this is a base feature in Vintage Story, and I really like that. I have so much fun carving these little things out. I was actually worried at the start that I was just going to end up copy pasting everything that was in RuneScape and there wasn't going to be any room for creative freedom, but because you're limited to a 16 by 16 grid with all these very boxy looking things, there's a lot of expression and work and thought you can put into it to decide exactly how you want to translate it. RuneScape is a polygon based game, this is a voxel little cube based game, and you have a decision to make on how you're going to translate from one to the other, and I really like how that process goes through. It's kind of like building a Lego set. You've got instructions to work from, but it's up to you how to interpret it, sort of. But if we carry on this way, you can see the willow trees there. We'll talk about trees in a minute, actually. But here's the smithy with the, of course, the rusted anvil outside. You can do your first smithing training with 3 identical workbenches. I don't know why, but that's how it is in the real game. And of course, the main furnace. I really like how these glowing blocks look. This is something you just have access to in creative mode. There's these glowing light blocks you can use, and I really like how they turn out. They're perfect for things like this, fires and furnaces and things. I always wondered what this little trough on the side was for. Is it like to take the waste away from smelting stuff? Like if you're smelting like steel, yeah, you get this like, I think they call it slag, which is a bit of a rude word, but it's like the muck that comes off the side. I assume that's what it's for, but I don't know. Or is it for casting, like, you know, mold casting? I don't know, but it's there in the game, so I've made it in this. And of course, around the side, you've got the overgrown grass, and over there would be, you know, where Fred's farm is, and eventually Varrock. But if we go down this way to the general store, nice little fireplace. There's a step ladder here for some reason. You could use it if you want. I don't know. This weird vase that exists. I don't know. But if you go upstairs, did you know that the general store in Lumbridge has an upstairs? Maybe you didn't. Now you do. There's a painter's easel up here, a table, a bed, and another little fireplace with a little cooking pot on it. I'm really proud with how that one turned out with the little rope hanging it up. That's quite nice. Little things like this really just, I don't know, really give it a lot of life. And that broken table, of course, which are just everywhere in RuneScape for some reason. Broken tables and chairs are just a really common feature. Now we're outside. Let's have a quick look at some trees. Obviously, you've got the standard, the normal trees with the 2 different versions, the 2-ball version and the 1 big ball version. And over here we have, of course, the oak tree with its big giant ball, which is a good point to bring up the topic of block choices. So I've used birch logs in this, debarked birch logs, in fact. If I just bring those up, you can see what they look like. So there's always a decision when choosing blocks. Do you want to use the material that you believe the RuneScape equivalent is made of, or do you want to use something that matches the colour of RuneScape? For the trees, I think I've gone for more of a colour approach. So obviously birch trees in real life, if I take one that has the bark still on it, have a bark that looks like this, and this type of tree doesn't exist in RuneScape as far as I'm aware. At least not one you can chop. But the normal tree of RuneScape, you know, doesn't make any sense. What is a normal tree? There is no normal tree in real life. It's got a sort of lightish colour to it, so I decided to go with this colour because it matches the colour. In some places, though, I have gone for the material more over the colour, because a lot of things in RuneScape are just flat colour with no texture, and it doesn't really make any sense what it's supposed to be. For example, perhaps these iron bars. This forms the portcullis of the gate. It would make sense to be made of iron, so I've used iron blocks. And they have this sort of rust texture to them. In RuneScape, obviously, they don't have that rust texture, but I kind of like how it looks in this. There's always a choice to be made. Do you want it to look like a real place? Do you want it to look like RuneScape? Somewhere in between? I've done a mix of both. I've really just gone for what I thought looked better at any individual point. But yeah, with that tangent out of the way, let's continue on down to one of probably my favourite buildings, the church. I'm really proud with how this one came out. Of course, you've got the big stained glass. That was a huge amount of building work to, very fine, intricate chisel work with all the different colours of glass to make, the stained glass windows. But I think it was worth it. It looks really cool. The patterns on them don't match exactly the real ones. I found it too difficult to translate exactly the patterns of the real stained glass windows. So I've came up with my own sort of Sardamine god dude. This one's quite close with the star, and this is a sort of simplified version. But of course you've got the organ with the chair to sit on, and the candles, the prayer altar, of course, and all the pews, the little prayer resting stands. Yeah, really happy with how this building came out. The broken floorboards as well. Nice little effect with there's actually just some black blocks in there to make it look like a big hole. But if we leave the church and head into There's this random little house next to Bob's axes. It exists. It's small and cozy. And around the side, of course, is Bob's axes, which is, very simple inside. There's not much in here. But did you ever know, again, Bob's axes has an upstairs, but you can't get to it in-game. There's no way to get up there, so there's no way to know what's actually... But it exists, so I added it. But, of course, if I just go no-clip for a second, there's nothing in here. Because we can't get there in real life, in the real game, so I didn't put it in this either. And if we go all the way to the... Oops, still in... There we go. If we go all the way to the end, then this is where the cooking tutor lives, with his little brown bed and, of course, another range by the side here. It's a nice little place. Oops, I got myself stuck. If we go through to the last location now, we have the cemetery with all the headstones. This is my attempt at a yew tree. It's a little bit spindly. I'm not quite sure if I like it, but it's a very hard thing to replicate in this style. The branches sort of sprawl out diagonally, and it's very hard to get diagonals to look good in a grid-based game. But, if you're ever doing a chunker count, this is why you need to get 60 wood cutting. And the last building, of course, the mausoleum, where you'll do Restless Ghost. I never noticed, actually, before building this, all these pillars on the inside. I don't know why. I don't really know how they work, because they're sort of like half pillars and they don't exist. Sorry, bird moment. I just had to capture one of my pigeons because she's not very good at flying and she crash landed, so I had to go save her. Anyway, but yes, with the pillars and also these vines on the side, just another one of those little details that you just really get to appreciate when building a little project like this. I think that is everything. If I take you up into the sky, we can get a feel for how it looks from the top, which obviously is how you would normally see it in game. Which I really do think it gives the a real close impression to the real game. It really does feel like RuneScape when you look at it from up here. There is one little thing I guess I haven't shown you, which is around the back of the castle, which of course has the little, I don't know what you'd call this, little gatehouse that's on the back there with the little gates, and all the way around the outside. Of course, so we can put the little plus spikes on the top there. But that, I think, is everything. Obviously, it was a lot of fun to make. There's a lot more to build. Actually, one thing I will show before we go is how it looks on the minimap, because I really like that. Again, really feels like the RuneScape minimap when you look at it like that. I love the minimap in this game. Again, from standard base feature, no mods required. As you build, the minimap updates and you can see everything you've made. It's really nice. Yeah, really looking forward to expanding on this more. And I hope you'll join me for it. Thank you for coming along with me. And there you have it, a block-based Lumbridge. This is the accumulation of about 40 hours total of building work, so I really do hope you enjoyed seeing it. It's been a lot of fun to make, and you really do get a better appreciation for this little world we've all spent this much time in when you really study it to make something like this. There's so many little details in there that you would normally just skip over while you're running past to hit the bank or do a clue scroll or something. If there is interest in more of this, I would love to keep building on it. Getting the whole of RuneScape built would be pretty damn amazing if we could make that happen. And on that note, I do have one question for those of you watching at home. Where should we expand to next? Should we go north towards Varrock, east across the river towards Al-Kharid, south to the swamp, or west towards Draenor? I'm really quite happy to do any of them, really. And I'm really excited about having this first video finally out. It's been a long time coming. I just hope it turns out to be something people actually like to watch. But either way, I'm glad that it did it, because I'm just glad that it exists now. But that's all I've got for you today. So please do comment to tell me where you think we should build next, and I'll catch you next time. Peace!